Hi, everybody. I am here on a Monday, which I don't usually have on. This is Maker Monday, and I'm here with Mike from Rio del Rey with his fabulous beans. So, announcing in our next bean club, we are going to be featuring the most gorgeous beans from his farm, grown 100% organic, absolutely gorgeous. These Rio Zapes, and I know it's so dark, it's really hard to see it, but they're the most beautiful purple with kind of like these dark maroon stripes in them, like a zebra pattern. They're absolutely gorgeous, and they are so tasty. So Mike has been growing. Mike, how long have you been farming here in California?
About 8 years. I actually had a whole different career and did other things. So when I retired, we had a lot of extra property here. We live on 2.5 acres. So we started in 2000, actually it's been longer than that, maybe 12 years. We started in 2010, 9, just trying some beans. Like the very first bean that I tried was what we call now the Rio Zape. What I got though was the actual bean from the Hopi tribe, which has a combination of different colors and different shapes on it. And in it, you could actually see, that bean. Now, I'm going to hold up here if you can see it. These are the things that you would have found in that. You can see there are black and white ones there. You can see, hold it up so we can see it again. There's a lighter colored one. And in fact, and they were called the Hopi purple string bean. That's where these were all sourced from, from original people, because this bean was shared between the Hopi tribe and the Zuni tribe. They're contiguous. And there were even yellow ones in here.
Wow.
And it's one of the things that I think of, when we're thinking about beans and bean varieties, that people don't see when they're buying beans at a store. And the reason for that is the beans, there are only 8 of them. There are 8 commercial varieties. They're all pretty well stabilized. And if there are any differences in them, those differences are all picked out. There's actually a machine called a color sorter that does this. So here, we actually believe that a lot of the flavor comes from those different colors and the varieties that are there.
Well, I was noticing in the bag that I got from you. So there are some that are completely almost black in color, very, very dark purple, and some that are striped. So, but you have kind of selected out through your seed, like over the time, to kind of get to this kind of variety.
That's very, very selected. In fact, that is a new hybrid bean from UC Davis that we worked for 5 years developing. Because the problem with heirloom beans is that 90% of them are infected with what is called the bean common mosaic virus. And that limits the productivity of the plant. It doesn't kill it, but to give you an idea, you could take this bean and grow it, and you might get, on a 1/4 acre plot, you might get 200 pounds. When we improve the bean and now grow it, we get 3 times that amount.
Interesting. So talk to me about the difference between hybrids and GMO. So a lot of people are very confused between those two things. So we've got a hybrid and then we've got GMO. What's the difference between them?
Okay, well, the hybrid is made by traditional breeding methods. In other words, you just take the pollen of one bean flower and you cross it with another one, and that creates a hybrid. Now, that means that you've got 2 different beans. Normally, beans don't cross-pollinate even with themselves. They're closed-pollinated. They open their flowers inside, and within 2 or 3 days, they pollinated themselves. So there's consistency, and you can plant beans right next to each other, and unless there are a lot of insect activity, mainly bees that are going to come and cross-pollinate, you're not going to see that as compared to corn. So hybrids just a typical way of breeding. And people have had hybrids forever as they've grown things. They'll notice some of these things. They'll say, "Oh, that's really good. It's got a better flavor. The plant is more upright. It's more productive." Whereas in a genetically modified organism, I need to say this right up front, there are no genetically modified beans. They don't exist yet. Okay? So what you're doing in making a GMO is you're taking genetic material from other sources. It could be an animal, it could be a virus, it could be all sorts of different things, and you're injecting it into the DNA of the plant to get the quality or qualities that you're looking for. Most of us, when we think about GMOs, we're thinking about GMOs that have been put in like corn and grains, mainly so that you could spray a weed killer on the crop. It doesn't bother it because you've altered the genetics. So that's the difference. And I think people should be really aware that, like in organic farming, there are absolutely no GMOs allowed. It's all free of that, and that's what you're certified to do.
And so talk to me a little bit about, so if something is a hybrid, so what UC Davis has done is they've taken the heirloom, sorry, little tickle.
No problem.
They've taken the heirloom and they have improved upon the original heirloom a little bit. So
Let me explain that process.
Are they doing Rio Zape? So is it still the heirloom then?
Oh, absolutely. It's still the heirloom, but it's now has a gene in it that resists the virus. And the reason why I know it's an heirloom is there's an old story that's told, the Mohawk Indians. And they say if you grow a bean for 7 years, you make it your own. Beans are really adaptable. And over 7 years period of time, any of those little things that are bothersome, people have like culled out. And the bean essentially is going to be that way unless it's really disturbed. So when we're making this bean that you have here, we started with a white bean called Matterhorn. And we crossed the white bean that has the resistance with the Rio Zape. And what comes out of that isn't the bean that you have. There are all sorts of shades and colors and other things. And so what we do is we now take the beans that are closest to the original colors and we plant those, and then we have our original Rio Zape. And what we do now is backcross. It's called backcrossing. We do that 7 times at least. And by the time you've done that 7 times, you have like 99 point something % of the original bean, plus you now have the resistance. Yeah. So you've actually, and in fact, this is the kind of thing that was done with all the beans that people buy in stores. They did this, they looked at it, they looked at varieties, and in fact, all the beans you buy in stores are all bush beans because they're easier to harvest. You can imagine what it would cost. It's just like a string bean, a green string bean, to pick each one of these beans individually, because they pole beans, you have to work. So all the commercial varieties are bush beans, and they're all dried. All beans start out as green. They're a perfect vegetable. There's no protein in them. But by the time they dry out and form the dry bean, you've got both a vegetable and a plant protein.
Interesting. I didn't know that they didn't have the protein until they dried.
That's right. As they start drying, in fact, there are 3 stages of bean development. The first one is the string bean. It's green. There are no little seeds in it. The next one is called shelly. It's like peas in a pod, still green. Pretty much not much protein, but interesting to eat, like a fava bean, for instance. And then finally, if you let that grow, the plant starts making the pod change from green to yellow to brown. And that's when we start harvesting. Half of the pods are brown, the other one a quarter are yellow, and the rest are green. We cut the water off, and that tells the plant reproduce, finish, and that's how beans are done.
Interesting. So how did you get into this? Because you had this whole other career, and then some people in retirement take golfing, and you took up bean farming. So talk to me about that.
Well, actually, there's several reasons for that. We built our own house here on this 2.5 acres. Man, it's been how many years? 1986, 14, yeah, about 35 years ago. And we had a lot of land. And of course, if you have a lot of land and you don't know what to do with it, don't do anything, because as soon as you put something on, you have to take care of it. So I had other careers, I did other things, and when I retired in 2008, I said, I want to get in and do some growing, because I had taught some of this in the high school. I knew about this, and I just happened along an article in Sunset Magazine on heirloom beans. I had never heard that description before. I knew what a tomato was. So that's when I started acquiring some of these beans just to test to see how they would grow. And I remember when I took this, what we call today the Rio Zape, and tasted it, it just blew my mind. It was just tremendous. And so I trialed over 3 years. Yes, there they are. Over 3 years.
I have to tell you, all the new beans I get, I cook them the same way. I just cook them with salted water and nothing else, so that I can really taste the bean. And these are by far one of the best I've ever had. They just have so much flavor. There's a slight chocolatiness to them. I was telling Mike earlier, I'm going to this batch I'm going to make into a refried bean today. But it's going to be a horribly boring recipe on our website, I have to say, because it's really going to say water and salt and a little onion. That's it. Because
that's all you really need. If you're eating beans and you like that, I mean, another little thing that you can do to them is put a little olive oil on top and grate some Parmesan. And that will really add to it. It'll bring up more flavors against the cheese. So that's an interesting thing to think of.
Yeah, I know. Just like this bowl of beans with a little olive oil, salt, and pepper, and that's really all you'd have to do. I mean, it's
that's
just amazing in and of itself. That's why it's hard to do a recipe for these beans, because they're just so delicious as them alone. You don't need to do much to them.
Right. You don't have to do much to them. In fact, that's how we tested that bean and others that we, hybridized with 85 people, doing a blind tasting of all the different beans against the original ones. And because that was a real concern, which is, do they still have the same flavor profiles? Are they good? And yes, they are. And we have, good data. You couldn't tell the difference. The worst thing you'd want to see is if they're bad or not.
So you work a lot with chefs and educating chefs and the food community about how to cook these beans and the flavor of the beans, don't you?
Yes, I do a lot of work with chefs. Just a lot of basic education, because you don't see beans a lot on menus. Think about where you've been to a restaurant recently, unless it was a Mexican restaurant, you had refried beans. Kind of unusual. And it's the same thing with chefs. So I had to do a lot of education in terms of, here's some samples, we'll try this. We worked through things. I brought them here. They tasted the beans. They brought their staffs here, so they were educated. And boom, all of a sudden, I can't get enough of these beans. Like a bean that we grow is called a tepary. And they just love it. It has the most protein of any bean, 24%. And the great thing for chefs it doesn't fall apart when cooking. Like the Rio Zape is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to make a bean gravy.
I care. Now, part of it, I like the gravy, and that's what I'm going to want. You can see a little bit of gravy in there. And I want when you cook them with salt, this is the thing, everybody cook your beans with salt. because if you cook them with salt, they'll stay intact. If you cook them without salt, they'll explode. So you want to always cook your beans with salt. But Mike has another tip. He was talking about brining beans.
Right. See, I would not add the salt to the beans while cooking, because that will like extend the cooking time. But I found, I was just cooking some of these 2 days ago, is you take your beans, like a pound of beans, you put them in water, cover them with 2 inches of water, and add a tablespoon of salt and let them soak overnight. And what that does is the salt softens. It's actually like a water softener, softens the outer skin. So it doesn't make the bean salty, but it lets that outer skin be flexible. So when they're heated, what's going to happen? They'll expand, but they don't pop. And so you get very few that will fall apart that way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So you're getting all of the benefit of the salt, which is, so that's why we salt the water when we cook the beans, is because we want the outer shell to get soft, and that outer shell then allows the water and the hydration to permeate the shell and the outside skin of the bean, get into the inside and cook more evenly, so that we don't get explosions and you don't get that mushy inside. You get the outside a little bit not quite soft enough, and by the time you get the outside soft enough, it's just mush. And so that is why we cook. So your method, which I'm dying to try, that's going to be my next thing.
It's just easy.
And it's perfect.
And the thing about that is, Lisa, you need to cook your beans, you taste them, they're tender, but some beans will go beyond tender to really creamy and just give a little more kick. We have a bean called the Hopi Red Lima. It's exactly like that. And it's the best lima you'll ever taste. And when you first cook it, it's got that kind of potato starchy-like consistency that people think of in limas. In fact, in this state, the most common bean grown in California is the white lima.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And I'll tell you, the tepary bean is one of the most exciting beans out there. And we do have some tepary beans in the shop from Ramona Farms, who grows them on their reservation in Arizona. But we're going to, spoiler alert, in an upcoming Bean and Grain Club, we're going to be featuring, I hope, the teparies from Mike here, because he's got blue speckled teparies, which is so exciting. I can't wait to try them. So I've had the black and I've had the white. What's blue speckled like?
It's interesting. You know what the white's like?
Yes.
It's slightly sweet, This one has a little more earth tones and really intense flavors. Ooh. So when you try it, and in fact, when you put it in, you'll actually still see the pattern of the bean, the speckling. You won't see blue anymore. It'll go away, just like in Rio Zape. But you will see some of that, and it's just a tremendous bean.
Wow, I can't wait for that. These Rio Zapes are so delicious. I mean, we just couldn't wait to try them. When they were cooked up, they smelled so good cooking, and just try them right out of the pot. Oh my gosh, they're so delicious. I can definitely see why you were inspired to cook these amazing, gorgeous beans from the Hopi Indians.
Exactly.
And you know what? We've got a giveaway coming up, and I'm going to be talking about that. Revealing. But so not only does it have a Hopi Indian bean in it, but also the Hopi blue corn in that giveaway. So you can have 2 of the Hopi ingredients in your pantry from that giveaway, which is kind of special. So that's coming up this week. So we're going to be talking about that this week. But it's such a great honor to have these beautiful, beautiful beans in the Bean and Grain Club. They're really hard to get. And it's kind of part of what the club's all about, is getting to explore unique varieties and different farmers and farms than you normally would see on any grocery store shelf. You're never going to see these, it's unlikely that you'll see these in your grocery store at any rate. Maybe around your neighborhood. No, I mean, it's really unlikely, because they don't produce many. They're a small farm. And so, that's part of the beauty, is there's so much love that goes into growing these beans. They're not mass producing. It's not a giant commercial farm. And that's just amazing. And I've even got pictures of Mike and his wife sorting the beans by hand. By hand.
Yes. If you get a bean from me, Either I have seen every bean in your package or my wife has, or both of us. And we grow. I was just going to show you some things that you can kind of contemplate of what's to come. These are all the different varieties of beans that we grow. Look at the colors, the patterns, and each one is, when you're growing them, they each have their own personality and their own care. Like the Rio Zape is a harder one to grow because it tends to be kind of viney and spread out on the ground. So we have to watch how much water we get because a plant, and that's why the commercial beans were bred to have all the beans going up and off the ground like this in a plant rather than going flat across that they lay down, because when they lay down on the ground, they can get moldy.
Right.
So that was a breeding characteristic. It's called architecture. They have the right architecture for the big, huge combine that'll come by and grab them, crush them and sort them out.
So when you harvest, are you hand harvesting these?
Yes, we're actually hand harvesting. We're using sickles.
Oh my God. So
we're cutting these all by hand, and then we're transporting them to our bean threshing machine, which we had built in Turkey because there was nothing affordable, in the U.S.
And I was just talking to another farmer the other day about this plate. So Pimentville, a Boonville Farm Collective, they're up and above Napa, and they grow peppers. And they decided to grow some beans this past year. So we have their first crop of pinto beans in, and they only grew 1,000 pounds. And then they went to look for a way to push these beans, and they didn't find one that was affordable. So they built one out of a bicycle. So they have a bicycle wheel on the back, and so every pinto bean that we've got was threshed with a bicycle.
That's better than the first advice I got on our beans, which was throw these on a tarp, throw another tarp over them, and run the tractor back and forth. Yeah, or your truck. You don't use the tractor, you use your truck. But that's a real problem. Just to mention something to you, though, Lisa, is that remember we were talking about the variants, the different colors in the beans. We're going to come out with 3 different pintos in another year. Wow. One is gold and brown. Another one is pink. And a third one is a really interesting one from an Indian tribe in Arizona, black pinto.
Ooh.
So we'll have some more because you see these, in the beans, and they're interesting. We sort of take a risk on it because when we first start, we only have a few. So we can't really taste them because then we destroy them when we taste them. So this is like a 2 to 3 year process from starting, at least, sometimes 4 years, going from, 20 beans all the way up to, harvesting 200 pounds of beans, let's say.
So you're going to start with like that many beans, and then
That's
from
right.
that, you have to go to enough for making pounds of beans, enough to make it commercially viable. Because obviously, to make something commercially viable, you've got to have at least 1,000 pounds.
Well, you have to have a big amount. I mean, our farm isn't going to produce thousands and thousands of pounds, and we're not interested in becoming the bean king of America. We're more interested in developing new things and sustainable things that other people can replicate. And just to give you an example, because you were talking about this, my wife, when we first started, we had a field of Rio Zapes and a field of what we call Anasazi beans. And out of 800, 900 pounds of beans, we found 25 beans that look like this.
Oh my gosh.
And they have the characteristic both of
Rio Zape and the Anasazi. Yeah.
You see that okay? Yeah, there it is.
So they've got the modeling of the Anasazi, right? And then the coloring of the Rio Zape.
And these are like creamy and rich. They're the best bean you've ever seen. When we had 15 chefs here doing a bean tasting of 10 different new varieties, because we always want to know what people are thinking before we even unleash this. Yeah, it could be real stinker bean. No, it isn't though. And this was 13 out of 15 voted this number one.
Wow.
That's how good this is. I mean, I'm not.
So this was just kind of like a nature's hybrid.
Well, yeah, it was nature. There were, we had a beehives down on one end of the field, and I'm sure it was just cross pollination with bees. And we pulled these out. The interesting thing is when you get like a hybrid, and you plant it, you look and you get a whole bunch of different things that come out. In fact, that's how you develop new varieties, because the bean has got a memory that goes back, way back. And some of these other things come out, the variants. So when we planted this, the first year, they were all the same. So we said it held. It's true. And all we had to do was increase it. And, there were fits and starts. I mean, 2 years ago, we had 113 degrees when the beans were flowering, and they lost everything.
Oh my God, yeah.
Lost half of my bean crop in one day, yeah. And that's a big problem. Most people don't realize this, that beans need to have, a cooler evening plus the somewhat warmer temperature. But if the overnight temperature is 70 degrees or more, the beans won't flower.
Oh.
And this already happened. It happened in Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, and in fact, if you think of the black bean, the small black beans, they start, halfway through Mexico and go all the way through Central America and into South America as far as beans of choice to cook with. And Nicaragua supplies these black beans. And they were not getting more beans, they were getting less and less. And that was because the temperatures were changing. And so they went to the world headquarters of beans, which is in Medellin, Colombia. We all remember Medellin. It's infamous, but that's where all the beans are. It's called Sion. And they said, we need to do something about it. And they said, oh, we've got the perfect thing. The Tepre bean, the small one we were talking about, grows on poor soil, it needs little water, and it loves the heat.
Yep.
And so what they did was not a traditional cross, because these are two different groups of beans. They actually did this, in a petri dish and produced a black bean that grew really well and now is adapted to climate change in Nicaragua. And their yields went way up again. And that's what we all have to be thinking of, in the future. I'm just sitting here talking about overnight temperatures, as you know. Not enough water. Oh, being that uses less water. So one of the things we're doing at UC Davis is a lot of research on the common beans that are sold, but also on the Tepres, getting ready for, unfortunately, what is inevitable. Yeah. The
Tepre is a wonderful bean. It's absolutely tasty, delicious, and so adaptable. I mean, it's just amazing. It's a fantastic bean, and so we're happy to have the Tepre. But I am excited that you are working hard to save things like the Hopi string bean, but which is the Rio Zape.
String bean, right?
That is just amazing, and it's so lovely. It's such a delicious bean, and we're so excited, and we're really excited about all the beans to come from you that are coming into the Bean Grain Club, because it's great to support the work you're doing, and it's great to support these great varieties that need to stay in our world and need to stay edible for us and for everyone to enjoy for generations to come. Thank you, Mike, for everything, and we will hopefully talk to you soon and enjoying your wonderful beans.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk again.
Oh, yeah.
Bye-bye.